Hello, Bryan Colter here, Evolutionary Astrologer, for another horoscope report for this upcoming Scorpionic solar eclipse that happens in just a couple days on October 25th. And then we have the lunar eclipse a couple weeks later on November 8th. And eclipses are great harbingers of change that certainly affect the collective in a big way, but also in many of our own personal lives as well. And these two events are particularly intense because they're coinciding with the final Saturn-Uranus square, which is an event many of you already know about. It's been happening over the last basically 2 years, and this is the last hurrah, and then we amplify that even more with these eclipses. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the chart here so we can understand what's happening. So as you can see, here's the solar eclipse here happening at 2 degrees of Scorpio. We also have Venus very significantly placed at 2 degrees of Scorpio as well. So Venus will be a major focalizer during this eclipse. Also, as I said, this final Saturn-Uranus square, which is affecting the nodes, square the nodes as well. And then lastly, we have Mars in Gemini. Now, Mars is the classical ruler of Scorpio, so it's important to look at it. It's in a loose trine aspect to the eclipse itself, and then also in a pretty tight square to Neptune and Jupiter. So this Mars square Neptune Jupiter, as well as this eclipse and the Saturn-Uranus square, those are really the headliners. But let's just start off with a broad interpretation of Scorpio, because this will give us a feeling of the energetic texture of this event. And Scorpio is a water sign, and all water signs are on the emotional plane and orient powerfully in the direction of an expression through the subjective reality. So Scorpio, of all the water signs, one of the words associated with it is intense, and that's a word I would pick for this solar eclipse. Intense, inward, subjective, psychological. It's classically known as the archetype of the psychologist, of the private detective, of the murder mystery writer, of the shaman. It goes by all these different terms, but what all those archetypes, which kind of feel like cartoon figures to us, what they have in common is the search for truth. And it's a very transformational sign, transforming in the sense of working on our own charged emotional material and transmuting that, or at least seeking to transmute that, into more powerful personal power energy. So words that come to mind for this Scorpionic solar eclipse are stormy, intense, revelatory, truth coming to light. October surprise would be a good one, as the deep truths and untruths, as we'll discover, coming to the surface. Okay, so this is a deeply emotional, intense time. Of course, there's a positive evolutionary way to work with this, that we always want to keep our eye on the prize and how can we grow with this energy. But the lunar eclipse in a couple of weeks, that one has a much different texture to it. It feels much more disruptive, shocking, eyes wide open sort of feeling. But we'll talk more about that in the next video. Now, solar eclipses, it's very important to recognize where it is in your own chart. Okay, if it's activating a sensitive point in your chart, the eclipse is going to be hugely important in your own life. I'll give you a couple examples. The first day I met my wife was back in 2018 during the blood moon. It was a very powerful event. And there we met for the first time in Beijing, China, of all places. And it was very surreal looking up at this blood moon as this was happening. And the blood moon in my chart wasn't happening in some obscure corner of the chart. It was right on my ascendant and descendant axis, which for anybody's chart is one of the most important axes to look at. Okay, so that was a monumental shift in my life. And then also on this solar eclipse, on the 25th, we're actually moving into our new place. And we didn't plan that. Either of those I didn't plan, even as an astrologer. It just happened, by chance, synchronistically, that these big events happened. And this eclipse is affecting my own chart in a big way as well, because it's sitting right on my Jupiter known as a very positive, beneficial planet, typically, in my fourth house of the home, the literal house. So you can't make this stuff up. So I don't mean to center this on me, okay, but really to underscore a fundamental principle here. We have to be careful because I'm generalizing to a wide audience. And these events, although huge for the collective, they don't affect everybody personally in the same way or the same level of magnitude. So therefore, understanding your own personal chart and where these eclipses are happening in your chart is very important to understand how big it's going to be for you. And, many of you might not have an interest to learn about astrology or any of that, which is totally cool. And learning astrology can be very daunting and intimidating, but it's actually not that hard to have an elementary understanding of your chart, how it works, and to just recognize if these eclipses are touching a sensitive point in your chart. Because if the eclipses are, if you, for example, if you have your sun, moon, or rising sign in the early degrees of Scorpio, look out. This has huge evolutionary implications for you, And I suspect, since I'm moving into this new place with it in my Jupiter and my fourth, that of all the places I've lived, and as a Sagittarius, I've lived in a lot of places, this house in particular is going to be very important for me in my life. I don't know exactly in what way, but I'm paying close attention. So it's important to understand that about your chart. And if you want to learn about it, I have a 40-minute video. It's only $15 where I'll describe you how to read your chart and recognize your planets in your houses, etc. So I'll put a link above and in the show description if you want to check that out. So, truth coming to light. Okay, hold on to your butts. That's a line I used last week, because the storm is here. We've been through the preparatory phase. Now it's time to batten down the hatches and not brace for impact, but just kind of become the eye of the storm. This is something I talked about in the last video, because this eclipse happening, during this final Saturn-Uranus square, as I said. Now, I've talked about the Saturn-Uranus square pretty much in every video for the last couple of years, so I'll spare you the repetition. But, this is just the tension between the old life and way of living in a friction-based evolutionary intention for the new, the evolution, the seeking of freedom, which is more the Uranian principle, and the old outdated structures of the past are somehow at cross purposes of this new future we're trying to step into, which is very tense. And Uranus likes to shake things up. It likes to disrupt. It likes to move quickly. And Saturn is like the brick wall of reality. So these planets really are very opposite in a lot of ways. But there's another feature of Saturn-Uranus that I talk about sometimes, but not enough. And it's the idea of a lot of the word change keeps coming up in my mind over and over, because I said right at the beginning, eclipses are great harbingers of change. Uranus is very classically represented as a planet of change, often sudden change, because it's the planet of earthquakes and lightning bolts. So sudden, shifts, expect the unexpected, that sort of energy. And then Saturn, although not typically described as a planet of change, is associated with great change. Anybody who's, which is most of you, gone through their first Saturn return around the age of 29 or 30, or second Saturn return in the late 50s, no, those are big times of change, and even the late, great Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, he was asked about some of the astrological planets in astrology, and he called the Saturn the bringer of change. So all these symbols of great change occurring, and the tension that the Saturn-Uranus square has been building over the last couple of years is really, I feel, hitting this breaking point. The imagery that comes to mind for me during the Saturn-Uranus square during the eclipses is the water's been building up behind a very big log jam. Okay. And now during this eclipse season, over the next couple of weeks, the logs are going to finally give away. The water is going to sweep through the land and go way beyond the borders of its normal route, and then spread into the landscape and change the landscape forever. So this is, it's going to be good change, although it may be uncomfortable for some, but ultimately we're really trying to step into this new world, this new way of life. Now, always when considering the events here, we want to take into consideration the planet or planets that rule the sign we're talking about. So this is Scorpio, right? And there's two planets that rule Scorpio, Pluto and Mars. And Mars is the more powerful one here, so we're going to focus primarily on that, but just paying homage to Pluto. A couple weeks ago, it started its going direct. It stopped its retrograde and went direct. And what that means is, from our perspective here on Earth, it's still moving very slow in the sky. Astrologers call it stationed, where it's just kind of stands still in the sky. It's slowly starting to pick up speed. But whenever a planet's stationed, it's very, very strong. And it's in a quite loose, what's called trine to the eclipse. So, Pluto is strong in its own right. However, Mars is even stronger because what's happening pretty much equidistant between both eclipses is that Mars is going to go retrograde, which means Mars is also slowing and stationing in the sky right now. It happens like, it goes retrograde, I think, like 6 days after the solar eclipse, so right in the halfway point. So it's slowing down right now, becoming very strong, as I said, in that trine to the solar eclipse, so in aspect to it, but then even more significantly in a very tight square, which is a 90-degree angle, which is, again, a friction-based aspect to this Neptune-Jupiter. So we got Mars in Gemini. Gemini is the sign of the communicator. It's an air sign, so it's on the mental plane. It deals with our cerebral function, our thoughts, how we communicate, even our perception of reality. Now, a useful way of entering into the evolutionary intention, both the good and the bad side of it, for, Mars going through Gemini, especially with it going retrograde, developing a more introverted expression of it, so we can contemplate these energies and think, okay, how does this affect me in my life? Well, think of it this way. Mars, the war god, is sitting in our mouth, on our tongues, ready to leap into battle intellectually, cerebrally, and communicatively, So that's a useful way of thinking about it. Now, be careful what you say, because it might come out more impulsively or quickly than you had intended before you really got to think about it, But let's first introduce the high-end expression of this, developing more warrior-like courage and assertiveness about speaking up. Speaking up, Gemini, it's supporting through the positive trine this truth-sayer energy, revelatory, exploring the stormy depths of our psyche, ferreting out the truth, valiantly combating where people might be in denial, or overly compartmentalizing or over-rationalizing some fierce truths, because Scorpio is ultimately about fierce truths. Now, the challenge here is, and this you can get out of hand, but the challenge here is there's this storminess of Scorpio, the emotional reactivity potentially, or emotional charge fused with those warrior-like words going out into the external environment, okay, which can be potentially destructive. That's what we want to be careful of. Plus, it's in a square to this Jupiter-Neptune. Now, Jupiter is in Aries, which is the sign Mars rules. So here we have like double warrior energy here. And Jupiter's the king of the gods. And it is a very beautiful planet in a lot of ways, but when these two planets are square to each other, I would say a shadow side potential would be egoic pride, basically, a lofty sense of oneself, right? So the Neptune here is the spiritual planet, the planet of divinity, the god of the sea, which is a metaphor for the sea of consciousness. So the balancing act between the square here is to speak the fierce truths, not with more egoic pride, but rather with spiritual warrior energy. Neptune, Aries, Mars, spiritual warrior energy. So ideally without the egoic pride, and instead with this divine warrior energy, okay, which seeks to ultimately, because Jupiter is the faith builder, lift the spirits of others as a primary motivation of speaking those truths. okay, instead of the more competitive side of Martial, Jupiter, Aries energy, okay, that has that competitive I am right, almost dogmatic energy associated with it. So it's kind of a touchy, delicate area, but with enough self-reflection, we can understand the difference between the two. And if we have enough awareness in the moment, instead of getting into the more, let's say, scorpionic reactivity, emotional reactivity, we can stay firm in this more mental field of Gemini, which is able to disseminate ideas courageously, but with that primary motivation to lift people up instead of to combat. And then, of course, there's many ways to get it wrong, which you can pretty much look at the inverse of what I just said. But the low end or shadow side of this very volatile cocktail of energy here is this more destructive warrior energy at the tip of your tongue, with a sharp tongue that can cut, which is more destructive in the sense, I will trigger you with truth bombs, deal with it, as if that's some sort of badge of honor, because there would be the egoic pride, having a certain reverence for the truth that you hold, for your psychological depth. And, some truths need to be said. If you get triggered, deal with it, and of course, truth needs to come up to light, but it's all about the motivation. What's the motivation? Is it unity or polarity consciousness? Is it love or is it anger and pride and destruction, right? So if those warheads are, armed with a lack of spiritual and psychological self-awareness, this spouting can devolve into another shadow side of Neptune in Pisces, which is delusion and dishonesty, okay? And this delusion and dishonesty would be hiding behind prideful denial and compartmentalization from the actual truth, okay, and expressing it anyways. So, this is a tricky set of energies here, and we'll see a lot of this, again, within the collective. Now, what I haven't talked about, which is really primary here, because it's right next to the solar eclipse, is Venus, the goddess of love. So this is heavy-duty relationship themes. So this scorpionic intensity can come out to play in our close, intimate relationships, especially if the solar eclipse is activating, especially like a relationship section of your chart. Maybe your birth chart Venus, or one of the relationship houses like the 7th or 8th or 4th house. So just look to see where it is in your chart. And that intensity can come up there. And if manifested with unawareness, okay, it can lead to some epic, stormy fights, okay? And that will, if not worked with through the evolutionary lens, and just sort of happens randomly flowing through us, it can lead to actually growing the problems within the relationship, because it can increase the psychological drama within the relationship and, strengthen the already pre-existing problems. And this is why astrology is super helpful in knowing your own chart, because a line I love to jokingly use, since I grew up in the 80s as a boy, I loved G.I. Joe. I had little G.I. Joe action figures and play out those scenes and watch the cartoons. And the opening line from the cartoon was, "Knowing is half the battle." So that's why astrology is so helpful. So with awareness about this Venus in Scorpio conjunct the eclipse, this can, yes, bring about an intensification of the emotionality about our wounds. And yet again, just like I was saying it on the more negative side, trigger epic stormy fights, although we look at the positive potentials of that. If worked with as a power couple, and this can happen between close, best friends and, close work relationships or artistic connections, but close relationships, I would say, with Venus, okay? But if worked with let's say, humility and a willingness to grow, can lead to profound realizations, because Scorpio is about the uncovering of truth and exploring, the private investigator. It's like, ooh, that was a touchy area. What you said was like pouring salt in the wound of my childhood trauma, or maybe even karmic, and to explore that together with that humility can lead to profound realizations about each individual's, psychological garbage can, so to speak, and then how that affects the couple. This is like potentially an existential therapy session, Now, if tackled with, honesty, a willingness, without denial. Many people have denial about their own wounds. I think some illustrate this more than others, but it's very common. And if explored together in the spirit of love and growth, can lead to transformational breakthroughs for the couple, which would then deepen the bonds of the connection tremendously. But it takes a very strong couple to accomplish this, though. Venus also represents our values. Good time to think deeply and psychologically, Scorpio style, about what we value. And also during this eclipse to reconstruct some of those values, because it's a good time for that change. And again, knowing your own chart is handy. Knowing what house this eclipse is happening in your chart or what planets it's interacting with gives you a better idea on which values to focus on in your life, as well as to probe and explore honestly about your relationship to that area of your life and what changes are appropriate to make there, to leverage this eclipse as it brings this wave of change in your life. Okay, so again, the chart analysis is super important. So as I said, the truth coming to light, revelations, okay, some of those truths will be hard to look at or have the quality of scorpionic intensity or taboo subjects that people like to think about in a more, again, compartmentalized way or in denial about. So, really the intention energetically, archetypally, and synchronistically is truth coming to light in the collective, a deluge of honest revelations coming to light, commingled with some delusional insanity masked as truth. And then as we wade through the muck and mire, there's a lotus of truth that are there, and if recognized, will raise individual and collective consciousness. Those are the core evolutionary intentions, with the goal being to expand our consciousness. Now we're going to transition into the meditation. This is a meditation I've done many times before on this channel. I feel it's appropriate to do it now because the focus of it is to find balance within our three bodies, our physical, emotional, and mental bodies, because having balance moving into this eclipse season, I feel is really important. So wear headphones for best results because I use binaural beats, and enjoy. Thank you. Close your eyes and sit in a nice, comfortable position with a nice straight spine. And begin by focusing on the breath. And as you inhale through the nose, you feel your lungs expand, the tissues of your body expand. And now exhale, nice and easy. And you want the in-breath and the out-breath to be natural, comfortable. You don't need to pause between the inhale and the exhale. Just in and out. And as you inhale, feel the oxygen fill the lower lungs and belly first, and then the middle lungs, and then the upper lungs as you feel your chest expand. And exhale from the belly first, and then the middle of the lungs and upper lungs. Always belly first. Now, if you can, try to feel the beat of your heart and connect with the pulse of life. As you inhale and exhale, always be aware of the beat of the heart. And now try to coordinate the in-breath and the out-breath with the heartbeats. So try 3 or 4 beats of the heart per inhale, and then match that with 3 or 4 beats of the heart per exhale. And if you can slow it down even more to 6 or 7 beats of the heart, that's even better. But don't push yourself. You don't want to feel out of breath. And now add a visualization. As you inhale, see a beautiful snow white color fill your lungs with the oxygen and then spread throughout your entire body. And with each inhale, you see that white color flood through your body and become brighter and brighter. And as you exhale, the air goes out, but the energy stays in. You want to build that brightness. And sometimes it's easier to maintain the energy in the body if you exhale through the mouth. Both the nose and the mouth works, but I feel it's easier to maintain the visualization and keep the energy in if you exhale through the mouth. And with each inhale, you see yourself as more luminous, a star being, shining in all directions around you. And you see this white glow, very strong, surrounding your body, about 3 inches around your body. This is your etheric body. And by focusing on this visualization, coordinated with the in-breath, you are strengthening the quantity of light in your etheric body. Now, bring your attention to your stomach, about 3 inches behind your belly button, in the center of your abdomen. And keep your attention point there. And you're still seeing your entire body as white. And on the next inhale, you add another color, a beautiful sky blue sun in your stomach. It's the size of a beach ball in and around your stomach. And with each inhale, it grows brighter and brighter. So bright that you see the rays of the sun shining in all directions around you. The sun itself is sky blue. The rays of the sun are bluish white. Inhale, see that sun glow as bright as you can. And as you exhale, the air goes out, but the energy stays in. This is the main energy center of the body. It houses all your etheric vitality, your subconscious mind, And by focusing on this center, it really helps to balance the energy of your material body. Say to yourself, I want perfect health in my material body. Now bring your attention up to your chest area. And in the center of your chest, see a beautiful pinkish sun in and around your chest. Again, the size of a beach ball. And with each inhale, that pink color grows bright. And the rays of the sun, shining in all directions, are pinkish white. This is the center of our psychical body, the world of emotions, sentiments, and desires. And this is our love center. As you visualize this pink color growing stronger and stronger, feel joy, self-love, compassion, gratitude. Pick an emotion and feel it. And now say to yourself, I want perfect health in my emotional body. On the next inhale, bring your attention up to your throat and visualize an orange sphere in your throat, the size of a tennis ball. And same thing, as you inhale, that orange color grows brighter and brighter. And as you exhale, the air goes out, but the energy stays in. Visualizing this color in this location is very healthy for your thyroid. And it's very healthy as you filter your blood. And very good in times of illness, or even to strengthen your body against illness. On the next inhale, bring your attention to the center of your head and visualize a canary yellow sun in and around your head, the size of a beach ball. And you see that yellow color getting stronger and stronger the more you breathe. Yellow in the center, and the rays of the sun shining in all directions as far as the eye can see, in a yellowish white color. This is the center of your noetical or thought body. The more you balance this center with this color, the more you balance your thoughts and intentions, and also increase the power of your creative thoughts. Now say to yourself, I want perfect health in my thought body. Now spread your awareness throughout your entire body and see that white color again throughout the body, suffusing with every cell of your body. And visualize the blue center in your stomach, the pink center in your chest, and the yellow center in your head, all at the same time. And all the rays of those suns have a whitish color to them. And see white all around your body. And all that white color around you forms into a shell of protection. The shell looks like an upside down egg. The wider part of the egg at the top, surrounding all three of your bodies and protecting you. So you see white all around you, blue in the stomach, pink in the chest, yellow in the head. And say to yourself, I want perfect health in all three of my bodies. The music will begin to fade, and you can wiggle your fingers and toes. And whenever you're ready, stretch a bit and open your eyes.